Many people have commented on the state of the bugs and glitches and undelivered features of Cyberpunk, but perhaps there's a more fundamental issue with the game that's preventing it from being enjoyable, even if they fix all of the bugs and add all of the features. Let's talk about why I think Cyberpunk can never truly be fixed. I actually don't mind when a game is janky, or if a glitch takes me out of my suspension of disbelief. As long as bugs aren't game-breaking, things such as T-posing enemies that then rectify themselves when they find their correct animation file are just sort of an endearing feature of gaming to me. Some of my favorite games are old games such as Half-Life 2 or Deus Ex Human Revolution, or many an indie title where they don't have the polish of a AAA game. Let's be fair, games don't look or feel good enough yet for you to be truly immersed in them by graphics alone. Some games do their best, but those often end up feeling incredibly boring because they've sacrificed gameplay for highly stable and lifelike interactions. Having unrealistic elements in a game, which might break a player's immersion, often makes the game more fun. Bugs such as the boss enemy in the elevator in the heist not attacking the player ruin the game because they stop gameplay from happening, not because they took you out of some immersed state. Immersion bugs cause the player to chuckle and move on, and at worst, they can ruin a tense or serious moment, while gameplay cracks ruin the fun of any part of the game they touch. In light of this, I think it's more important that we focus on the story of Cyberpunk. CD Projekt Red has always been excellent at storytelling. In The Witcher, there were great examples of human interaction that would be hard to come by in other games, despite the non-human nature of many of its characters. The macro story on top of that, which was designed to give the player incentive to explore side content, but always remember their true goal, worked for that game. Cyberpunk has many good examples of the micro-storytelling, such as the entire Claire quest line, or the interactions between Jackie's mom and the preacher. Many of the side characters have their own great stories, and are given opportunity to tell them in their own time. Rather than forcing the player to read it through extensive dialogue trees or exposition dumps, they come across naturally in dialogue. Character histories, what they've been going through, what their plans are for the future, etc. The macro story of Cyberpunk, however, has a major, glaring, and frankly amateurish flaw. The first problem with the story is that it sets a time bomb in your head and then expects you to have the motivation to go questing. The story could be somewhat fixed by reorganizing where its sections take place. A prologue could be the introduction to your life path, and even if you maintained the sort of fake montage that establishes your story with Jackie without letting you play it, and forces you into a singular life path even if you chose a different one, let the player free roam before the heist quest. The first act could be where you meet up with Panam or Judy, establish connections with extra characters, and are allowed to freely roam the city. Then Act 2 is the build-up to the heist, and at the start of Act 3, the heist happens, and a time bomb is placed on the player. This would give the player incentive to actually complete the story in a timely manner when they reach the end of Act 2, and also allow the player plenty of time during Act 2 to roam around and complete any side quests without the feeling of impending doom, since they know they're going to die in a week anyway. Even with a time bomb in your head, there could be a reasonable explanation for why you're allowed to continue questing. That explanation could go something like, it'll take several years for Johnny to take over your psyche, and in the meantime, you have to choose whether you're gonna shut out the inevitable reality and just live your life, or try to go out in a blaze of glory at the end. This would fit with the theme of the game. Would you rather try to make it to the top by being slow and methodical, or go out in a blaze of glory? However, this brings us to the second flaw, and the one that prevents the game from being fixable. Nearly all of Cyberpunk's canon endings that they have written are about going out in a blaze of glory. There's no option of trying to shut out the inevitable. There's no actual cure ever presented. You are simply given an opportunity of whether you will let Johnny take over your body and you die, or you kick Johnny out and you die. This prevents there from being any form of meaningful post-story DLC, because there is no canon ending where the player character lives without Johnny in their head. A DLC could only provide extra backstory to the story as it's written now. There could be a DLC where you get to actually play the Jackie montage, or there could be a DLC where you play more of your backstory depending on your life path. However, the only way the story can continue is by rewriting the main story to include an alternate canon ending where the player character lives, or by introducing an entirely new cast of characters that are possibly tangentially connected to the original cast. The problem with the latter option is that players will have established a connection with Pan Am or Judy, not to mention characters like Misty, the Doc, or God forbid, Johnny Silverhand. As a movie, the story that Cyberpunk tells could work. The reason this is the case is that the movie is supposed to be self-contained. It's not providing branching options of agency and choice each time you watch the movie. Instead, it tells you what happens and how it happens. Because of this, Cyberpunk could entirely work with the story as written as a Netflix miniseries or an anime of some form. It's a classic tragic story where the protagonist does not have any real agency over their situation. However, in the context of a game where you're given the illusion of free choice, it provides a distinctly unsatisfying experience when the player is stripped of any form of power over their character's destiny. In The Witcher 3, there were varying degrees of endings that were based on player choices, ranging from incredibly dark and grim endings, resulting in widespread death and destruction, all the way to happy and touching endings, where Geralt lives on with his chosen love and friendships. Contrast this with Cyberpunk, where the player has effectively no agency over their story. One of the praises this game got was that the story forces you to acknowledge that you don't have power within the city, but that the city is what's in control of the story. This could work in a different medium. However, players don't want to feel like they have no choice in their own fate. The game, instead of offering you options about how your character will live on, instead offers you options of how you would like to die. There are constant glimmers of hope throughout the story of ways that everything might turn out all right, and all of that is just stripped away from the player at the last moment. Now, the title of this video is slightly hyperbolic. I do believe there is a way to save Cyberpunk. However, this way is far too costly for CDPR to reasonably implement it and would probably not gain them back the fans that other fixes might. I don't like the phrase polishing a turd because it implies there's nothing of value to the original product, and there is a ton of value in Cyberpunk, but that value is squandered by a story which minimizes any achievements you make along its path. Instead, let's think of a metaphor of an elaborately crafted statue made out of cotton candy. It's beautiful, it's elegant, but at the end of the day, if it gets the slightest bit wet by the rain that's coming, the entire thing melts. Jamming extra DLC prior to the heist, or prior to the raid on the facility to extract Johnny, will not give any meaningful substance to the story. At the end, you know you are going to die canonically in 2 weeks. Your prognosis is short. Regardless of how much suspension of disbelief you have, such as being able to wait out entire months at the end of game time, the player knows that at the end, their character is going to die. And so whatever they accomplish prior to raiding Arasaka is meaningless. So what's my solution? You must have a canon ending where V does not die. As I said before, every single Cyberpunk 2077 ending results in V's death, either by a takeover from Johnny, self-inflicted wounds, or the process of extracting Johnny taking too much of a toll on your body. In my first playthrough, I got the ending where V goes on a space heist, but even that ending implies that V is still dying, and that's the only reason he'll take on such a risky mission. My solution would be a band-aid fix at best. The problem is that there are too many well-crafted and carefully polished endings where V dies. In order to allow reasonably for most players to feel like they're going to live on at the end, you would need to have more endings where you live than endings where you die. A possible solution would be to just patch out the deaths from the majority of the endings where your demise is only implied, such as if you successfully extract Johnny, you're not given 2 weeks to live anyway, but again, that is a band-aid fix. It's building more sculptures out of cotton candy. Cyberpunk hurts me, still to this day. I look back at the potential it had and the dreams that I had of playing what I thought would be the most immersive role-playing game of my generation. The Witcher 3's depths of story, set in Deus Ex's future metropolis, with a healthy dose of Doom's gunplay. When I look at what the game offers, it could be salvaged, and maybe in time it will be polished to a point where the finality of the story won't matter, because you've had the freedom to enjoy your life before you're forced to face mortality. There's a lot of good things that can be pulled out of Cyberpunk, and, although I don't think I can ever forgive this game, perhaps if CDPR recognizes their mistakes and corrects them, a Cyberpunk 2078 would be worth playing, with a clean slate, true RPG design, and preferably not rushed out at Christmas time to keep the Corpo scum happy. Those are just my thoughts. If you want more thoughts, I recommend watching Manly Review's video on Cyberpunk, and if you have 6 hours to spare, check out Action Button's review as well. If you like this video, leave a like, share it around. If you want to leave a tip, there's a Streamlabs link in the description, but please don't feel compelled, especially given my upload schedule. Until next time, adios.